Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Well, the days of Elul, the last month of the Hebrew calendar year, march on. Selichot will be observed this Saturday evening, September 17th. One really ought not to have a favorite among the holy days, but I love Selichot. The way that it introduces the themes of the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, the way that it includes allusions to all of the major musical themes that will uplift Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the way that it brings the color white to dominate the sanctuary, hinting of holiness, of purity, of forgiveness, and of new beginnings. The prophet Amos asks, when the shofar sounds, will the people not tremble? My friends, the shofarot are sounding. Will we not tremble? Okay. Our Sedra, deep into the book of Deuteronomy, is KI TAVO, beginning with Deuteronomy 26:1 and following. Moses, according to Jewish tradition, is literally in the last hours of his life. He will never complete his mission. He won't march with the Israelites into the promised land, and he won't have delivered all that God had revealed to him. Not just the written law, but the thousands and thousands of teachings that make up what we call the oral law, Torah Shabbat Peh, as well. Moses is 120 years old. He had spent 40 years with his people in the wilderness, but he will not achieve that to which he had devoted his life. He won't. None of us ever do. Our aged leader does not temper his language here. There is no time, after all, for niceties. The warnings that Moses sets before the people are couched in the direst language possible. If the Israelites fail God, if the Israelites ignore the divine teachings, if the Israelites fail to ascend a mountain of moral and ethical richness, if the Israelites turn away from their responsibility to the weakest and neediest in their midst, then they should expect nothing short of total disaster. The people will be torn from their land. And it says, our Sedra, God will rejoice, literally rejoice in destroying us. Our bodies will become food for the vultures. There will be darkness at noon. And we will greet that darkness with madness and with absolute confusion. To drive the point home, Moses mandates that when the people enter the land, they should build altars on two facing hills, Gerizim and Nebal. The blessings will come to a people who are faithful to God, and those blessings are assigned to Gerizim. The curses for those who turn their backs on God belong to Nebal. Please take careful note as to what is going on here. Moses is asking the people, telling the people, that when they enter the land, they must enter into yet another covenant with God. This is the third covenant. Do you remember? The other two? The first was the covenant entered into between Abram and God, a covenant known as Brit Bein HaBetarim, the covenant between the pieces. The second covenant was made at Mount Sinai. And now there would be a third one. So Manishtana, what's new in covenant number 3? Rabbi Shlomo Riskin offers a fascinating take on that question. Covenant number 1 was between God and Abram, with God promising that Abram would have a large family and that his descendants would have a homeland of their own. Very nice. Covenant number 2, the Torah, with 613 commandments, and promises of a special relationship between God and the Israelites, a relationship which strongly focused on ethical and moral behavior. But covenant number 3 was dramatically different. Moses tells the people in our Sedra to set up large stones when they enter the land and to coat those stones over with plaster. Then they are to write on those stones, Kol Divrei HaTorah Hazot, all the words of this Torah. And by the way, those words must be written Ba'er Hetev, Ba'er Hetev. Normally, those words Ba'er Hetev would be translated very distinctly. Ba'er Hetev is not at all an obscure phrase. Make sure that when you write the words of Torah on those coated stones, that you write so that the words are distinct and easy to read. But Riskin wants us to read the 2 words as the Talmudic sages read them. Inscribe the words deeply into the stones, first part, and include with the text translations into all of the 70 languages of the world. Okay, we get it. Inscribe the stones deeply so that the harsh desert weather would not quickly eradicate them. Fine, makes sense. But why have translations into all of the known languages of the world? They called it 70. First of all, if you did that, you would be creating something akin, at least in my imagination, to the Great Wall of China. Can you picture all of those plaster-covered stones with the Torah inscribed 71 times over? This is hyperbole to the nth degree. The rabbis knew that. They felt that the Torah was trying to tell us something very important here, something very new. Yes, we are meant to be a people whose antecedents go back to Abram and Sarai. We are a people held together by a shared history, not just by a shared faith. And yes, as a people, we are commanded to care for rich and poor, minorities of every kind, the powerful, the weak, the very old, and the very young. But that won't be enough. That's why, not why those first 2 covenants came into being. We must live as if we still hear the voice of God, demanding of us to become a kingdom of priests and holy people. If we fail to meet the standards of the 2nd covenant, our mission is at an end. We don't do Torah, our mission is at an end. But if we stand above the other nations, not because of our heredity, but because of our behavior, then those other nations will begin to look more closely at the teachings, the Torah, that structure our world. It would be like we provided each nation with a copy of the Torah in their own language, Be'er Hetev. That's what Israelis mean while they struggle, and I must say not always successful, to build a chevra mofet, an exemplary society. The building of a Jewish state and the strengthening of the American Jewish community are both expressions of the 3rd covenant. God told Abraham that his descendants will become a source of blessings for the entire world. And that's what an authentic Jewish community should look like, a source of blessings. If we fail, then the world might fail with us. And my friends, if we succeed, then we need not fear for the future. Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy Selichot. I will. See you next week. Shabbat Shalom.